Good morning, students. This is Dr. Priyanka, and today I'll be discussing sampling basics with you. We are starting Unit 3 today, and Unit 3 is sampling design. It contains introduction to samples, or you can say senses versus sampling, why sampling is important. Then we'll be discussing sampling methods. We have two major sampling methods, probability and non-probability sampling. And we'll be discussing both the methods and their subtypes in detail. Then determination of sampling size. Sample size is also very important. It should not be too large or too less so as to get actual results, accurate results. Then measurement and sampling scaling concepts. Scaling is basically used while measuring attitudes of people. When you try to ask someone like how do you rate such and such thing on the basis of or on the scale of 1 to 10, 0 to 10, 0 to 5, 0 to 7. There are so many scales available. They have different names, and they have different attributes related to attitude measurement. We'll be discussing them in detail. Then attitude measurement, how and why should we use one particular scaling for one particular attitude measurement. Then questionnaire design, we'll be designing questionnaire, we'll be discussing all the techniques available to design a questionnaire. Then basic concepts of reliability and validity, to actually check whether the questionnaire is reliable and validated or not. Then in the last we'll be discussing field work, study of field work with the help of questionnaire, or you can say a proposed agenda or something like that. So it is all basically is, you can say, related to collection of data. You will be deciding from whom you will be collecting the data and how you will be collecting the data, which kind of the tools you are going to use while collecting the data, and how would you design those tools. So this basically is the whole chapter on sampling design. Some terminology related to sampling: sample, population or universe, then population element and census. Let us discuss them. Sample basically is a subset of a larger population. We have a population, for example, the whole population is India is population. Right now, I'm not going to discuss what actually population is in this particular slide. I'll be discussing that in next slide. What our population is when we talk about surveys and sampling, right? A small or maybe any part of that population is generally considered as sample. Then population, any complete group of people, of sales territories or stores. For example, you want to measure attitudes of people in Chandigarh. That's it. People in Chandigarh. That means population of Chandigarh is the population, your target population, and then you will be selecting a subset from that population of Chandigarh, and that would be known as your sample. Then sales territories, you can say, sometimes you might be willing to measure some sales related data. For example, you want to measure this sales of car in Chandigarh, right? For that also, you will be having basically your target population is some part of people residing in some part of Chandigarh, or you can say some people residing in Chandigarh who can actually think of buying a car. You will be taking one particular group of people whose income is at just that level, at least they are not below from the from the locality where below poverty line people are residing. You will be taking one particular section of society, you will be taking one particular section as per their income from Chandigarh, and then you can have you can have measured their attitudes regarding sales of cars in Chandigarh, right? Or maybe you might be trying to have some survey or to measure things related to stores. You can think of all the stores available in one particular city or one particular area, and that is your population, right? And you can select a few stores out of all the stores which were among your population, and then these small stores would be your sample. Then census. Census basically is investigation of all individual elements that make up a population. For example, we were talking about people in Chandigarh. When we talk about people in Chandigarh, then census means you will be visiting each and every person residing in Chandigarh, and that would be called a census. If you will be selecting a subgroup and then you will measure their attitudes, that would be sampling. Population versus sample. Let us have a look at few things. This might clear more, like what is population and what is a sample. Sample is basically always a subset of population. Population is the entire group that you want to draw conclusions about. All the group you want to draw conclusion about. It is not like when I talk about population of the whole world, or population of India, or population of one city, one country. No, it's not that. Population means the kind of criteria you want to measure. Related to that criteria, you might be willing to measure one kind of people or one kind of attitudes. Then according to that particular attitude or related attitudes, those people who might be coming under the radar would be forming the population. For example, you want to measure attitude of all the managers in India. Then all the people who have the tag of manager would be the population of your study, and then you can select a few people out of those all those managers, and that would be your sample. Population can be defined in terms of geographical location, age, income, etc. Yes, when we talk about that, we want to measure attitude of people in Chandigarh, we are talking about geographical location. When we talk about that, I want to measure the attitude of people after 40, right? Then we are talking about population as per age. For example, when we talk about that how many people can afford cars, then we are talking about income at one level, right? So it depends on which basis you will be defining your population, on the basis of location, age, income, and so many other factors are also there. Population can be very broad or quite narrow. Yes, population can be the whole world's population as well, or population can be a small city's population as well. So it depends on the study you are going to do. You may want to make inferences about the whole adult population of your country. Yes, all the adult population of your country. That means you are taking a certain age of people and from just one country. That means all the people coming under certain age would be the population. This is really very huge, right? Then your research may focus on customers of a certain company. Yes, this is also true. You might focus customers of just one company. They might be in thousands or something, right? So that can also be done. You may be trying to study students of a single school. Yes, that can also happen. It is important to carefully define your target population according to the purpose and practicalities of your project. Yes, it is really very important. For example, if you want to study a particular school, then that is your population, and accordingly you will be deciding the sample. So that is why it is important to choose your target population accordingly. If you have not chosen your target population in a practical way, you have not chosen it carefully, then you would always find problems, or you can say errors, even after surveying the whole population. So it's really more important than anything else when it comes to sampling, that you decide the target population very carefully. If the population is very large, demographically mixed, and geographically dispersed, suppose it is very large, you are taking the whole world's population, or demographically mixed, you have taken so many demographic attitudes, or geographically dispersed, you have taken the entire country, and you are trying to show you are trying to study something like that which needs all attention of all the people residing in different cities, different states. So it is going to be very difficult to gain access to a representative sample. It's really going to be difficult, and it becomes more costly. Introduction to sampling. When you conduct research about a group of people, before that, let us study what is sampling. Sampling is a technique of selecting individual members or a subset of the population to make statistical inferences from them and estimate characteristics of the whole population. Basically, what you are doing in sampling is you are trying to take one part of population. For example, your population consists of 1000 people, and you will be choosing 100 people as your sample, and you will be doing the survey then on those 100 people, and you will be drawing inferences about those 1000 people after interviewing these 100 people only. So this is how sample is. Then different sampling methods are widely used by researchers so that they do not need to research the entire population to collect data. It depends on what kind of the sampling design should be used on the basis of purpose of the study. What kind of the purpose you have for your research study, on that basis we will decide what kind of sampling design, what kind of sampling research sampling method we need to use. So we will discuss them also in detail in next PPT, that what are the sampling methods and where they are used, right, as per the purpose. Now, when you conduct research about a group of people, it's really possible to collect data from every person in that group. Yes, suppose you have 1000 people in the group as your population, you might not be able to visit all of them. Some of them might be out of country, some of them are not available due to some health issues or something like that, right? So this tells you that you are not going to going to ask all the questions you have mentioned from all the population. So you can go with a sample which might represent the whole population you have decided. Instead, you select a sample. The sample is group of individuals who will actually participate in the research. Now, those 100 out of 1000 people would be participating in the research, and that 100 people is your sample size now. To draw valid conclusions from your results, you have to carefully decide how you will select a sample that is representative of the group as a whole. And this is dependent on two things: elements of a sample and sample size. Elements of a sample should be very carefully selected, because you cannot be judgmental. You cannot go with convenient sampling all the time. You have to sometimes randomly select the elements of the sample so as to get the maximum accuracy while generalizing the results about the population. And sample size should be accurate. It should not be very large or very small, so as to get the required results. Then stages in the selection of a sample. Defining target population. What do you mean by target population? Target population, we have already discussed that it is that population you are trying to draw conclusions about, inferences about, right? The population you are going to actually consider as the population of your study. Then select a sampling frame. You have to decide a sampling frame for that. What do you mean by a sampling frame? It is basically a kind of frame you decide for you while actually studying the population, because sampling frame is something which is going to decide what kind of the method you are going to use and how would you choosing a sample. Then determine if a probability or non-probability sampling method will be chosen. which is the method you are going to choose for your target population is also very important here, because when you go with sampling method thing, you have so many things to be considered. We will be discussing this particular thing in next video, that how you actually decide a sampling design. These are two major parts of sampling methods: probability or non-probability sampling method. These have further classifications as well. Then plan procedure for sampling, for selecting sampling units. Yes, how would you select the sample units? Selecting sample units again is dependent on the kind of sampling method you will be choosing, but still it is very important that how you are going to choose sampling units for your study. Then determine sample size. Yes, sample size should not be very large, so as you know, because suppose you have target population of 1,000 people, and for example if you study 700 people out of them, then there is no use of deciding sample and doing all the hard work to decide sample size and everything, because this is equivalent to target population then. And it should not be like you will be just reviewing 10 people out of 1,000. This is just 1% of the total population, because it will not tell you the actual performance or actual attitude of those 1,000 people then, because 10 is very small in number to decide about something. So it is, though we have some formulations to decide sample size on the basis of target population, so many things are there. This would be studied in third video of this particular unit. This is third unit. Third video is all about sample size. Then select actual sampling units. Once you have decided the sample size, for example, 100 people out of 1,000, now you will be deciding actual sampling units on the basis of the method you have chosen. You have chosen one method out of these techniques available here, and on that basis, you will be deciding the sampling units now out of the whole target population. And then conduct field work. In the last, you will be actually conducting the field work. You will going to survey those people through the method you have decided. You can choose to go door to door and ask them the questions. You can interview them, right? You can actually mail them the questionnaire and ask them to respond, or you might have some other ways to collect data from these people. You might be having something like you need to collect sales data of stores, so that is something mechanical. You can just mail them to send you the data, and you can overview the data. So it depends on the kind of research study you are going to do. Basically, last step is to conduct field work in sampling. What do you mean by target population? Though we have discussed it once again with some examples, relevant population related to your study. Why we are discussing target population again here? Because this is the first step of our study, right? When it comes to sampling. So relevant population, total population, or it might be operationally defined, or you can actually say all the comic book readers in one city or one state or in one country. Though it would be very large population, but still you can take it as a target population. Sampling frame is the actual list of individuals from which the sample will be drawn. Ideally, it should include the entire target population and nobody who is not part of that population. Once you have decided the target population, you will be reviewing that whether you have actually decided the target population well or not, and you will be actually framing, you will be actually listing down the whole of the population in sampling frame. For example, you are doing research on working conditions at company X. Your population is all 1,000 employees of the company, and your sampling frame is the company's HR database, which lists the names and contact details of every employee. So HR database is your sampling frame. which is going to decide that yes, this is the actual population you would be studying, or this is the actual population which is actually the part of your study, right? So it is a kind of example on sampling frame. Now we have the list of people who are actually being part of the population. Now you can decide the sample easily. So sampling frame deciding is very important here, and how you are getting the sampling frame is also important. For example, if you have not decided it carefully, this might lead to errors. We will discuss the errors in the last in this video. Sample units, group selected for the people for the sample is basically is your sample unit. How would you decide them? On the basis of few techniques available. Then primary sampling units you will be deciding, and secondary sampling units also would be decided, and then tertiary sampling units. What do you mean by primaries, secondary and tertiary sampling units here? For example, you are going to review all the sellers available in the city for one particular product. So primary sampling unit would be your consumers, secondary unit would be the retailers and wholesalers, and tertiary sampling unit can be some database available in your company. So this is how you will be deciding sampling units. But actually you will be deciding the sampling unit as whole as well. Yes, why sample study is preferred over complete population study? Why do we prefer it? Yes, there are so many reasons. Number one, reduction is cost. For example, you go and study 1,000 people, or you go and study 100 people. Yes, that makes that actually reduces the cost. You have to take printout of 100 questionnaires in case of 100 people, and you have to take 1,000 prints in case of 1,000 people, right? So that is primary reduction in cost. It would be with greater speed. Yes, when you are collecting data from 100 people, it would be much more speedier than collecting data from 1,000 people. Then wider in scope. Yes, even if you collect data from 1,000 people, you might get some people who are not actually interested in replying, or who have not replied properly, so that might distort the result. Over here, suppose you have chosen 100 people and 2 or 3 might not be replying well, you can always have 2-3 people in the waiting list, so as to widen the scope of the study, so as to get the responses at least. Then greater accuracy. Yes, you will be, when you review little less amount of people, you will be remembering the responses, you will be conducting the study well, rather than going to 1,000 people. Reduce labor requirements. Yes, if you hire one person to interview 100 people, you have to hire 10 people to interview 1,000 people. You might have to, right? Or it may take more time. So it actually reduces the labor requirements in case if you are not doing the survey by your own. Then it gathers vital information. Yes, it really does. Advantages. Maybe population makes it physically impossible to conduct a census. Sometimes our target population is actually larger, right? In that case, sample is good. If population is large, selecting a representative sample is only way to get the information. Yes, again, the same thing. There are some populations that are so difficult to get access, and so only a sample can be used. Yes, maybe some people are not interested to reply. That is why they try to show that they are not available. The inaccessibility may be economic or time related. Yes, sometimes economic conditions also doesn't apply, and sometimes it's time related. For example, in COVID times, we can see people are not interested in talking to any random person just like that. So that is also one of the things. Like a particular study population may be so costly to reach, like the population of planets, that only a sample can be used. Yes, these are also some limitations while doing sample studies. So it depends on so many things. There is not just one thing while deciding whether to go for sample or not. In sampling design, over here you can add one more thing. Sometimes you are actually doing the sampling, you are checking the sampling of a factory. you are checking some products, and sampling means you will be you will be actually using some products as a sample, and then you will degrade them, you will not use them. So in that case, of course, it is very important that you go for a sample study rather than the whole population. Suppose your factory has manufactured 1 lakh products, and you might randomly check that yes, whether these products are good or not. In that case also we use sample studies rather than population studies. So it depends. Sample design. Sampling design is a definite plan for obtaining a sample from a given population. You basically plan a design like how would you choose the sample from a population. You might choose sample randomly. For example, you have a list of 100 people and you are going to choose 20 people out of that. You can randomly choose first person, then every fifth person, because 100 divided by 20 is 5. So you basically have to choose every fifth person from the entire population. You can just do this like first you have chosen first person, then sixth, then 11th, or you can do like this: fifth person, then 10th person. On the basis of table of 5, you can choose 20 people. This is also one of the sampling design technique. So it depends how would you be choosing sample from a given population. There are methods available for that. It refers to the technique or the procedure the researcher would adopt in selecting items for the sample. It is basically a sampling design. It is determined before any data are collected, because before data is collected, you need to decide sample, and to decide the sample, you will be choosing sampling design. Yes, what are the points you need to take care while choosing the sampling design? First step in developing any sample design is to clearly define the population to be sampled. Yes, you are going to define your target population. Then a decision has to be taken concerning a sampling unit before selecting the sample. You need to decide what particular sampling unit you are going for. Then sampling unit may be of some geographical area, such as a state, district, village, etc., or maybe construction unit such as house or flat, etc. So again, you need to define sampling unit first before selecting the sample, whether you are actually going to target individuals or some units, as in households, or maybe some companies, or maybe a city, right? It may be a social unit such as family, club, school, etc., or an individual. Then frame should be comprehensive, correct, reliable, and appropriate. If your sampling frame is not correct, then it might lead to sampling frame errors. So it is also chosen wisely. The size of the sample should neither be excessively large nor too small. It should be optimum. Optimal sample is one which fulfills the requirements of efficiency, representativeness of the population, and reliability and flexibility. Then cost considerations from practical point of view must be taken care of, have a major impact on decisions relating to not only the size of sample, but also the sample design. And characteristics of a very good sample are: it should result in a truly representative sample. Yes, it should result in a small sampling error, minimum, because you cannot, make sampling error as 0. So it is like, it should result in minimum possible sampling error. Then it should be within budget available for the research study. Yes, that has to be taken care of. It should be accessible within the time limit. Yes, sample should be that much that you can actually assess it within the time limit. Otherwise, it won't be of any use for you. Yes, have you ever done sample study? Every one of us have almost done at least one sample study in life. If you eat first spoon of dal and conclude it needs salt, you have just conducted a sample. Sampling involves any procedure that uses a small number of items or that uses part of the population to make a conclusion regarding the whole population. By eating one spoon of dal, you have concluded about the whole, available dal, right? And that the whole katori of dal is your population, whole population, or the dal totally made by the person who have made it. The total dal is the whole population, and you have just tasted a spoon. and that spoon was the sample. In other words, a sample is a subset from a large population. In certain statistical procedures are followed, it is necessary to select every item in a population because the results of a good sample should have the same characteristics as the population as a whole. For example, you have a population, target population of 2 or 3 kinds, then you should make sure that sample should be drawn from all 2-3 categories of population so as to get the actual representation of the whole population. Some errors are associated with sampling. Sampling frame error. If sampling frame is not properly taken up, then it creates the problem. For example, when we talk about a company's, people associated with a company, that means all the persons associated with the company. And for example, we just had a talk about this. If we take the database from HR manager and start conducting, start going for the sampling, and by chance it just happened that 50 people have joined recently in last 2-3 days, and HR has not provided you with that particular data. It just happened by chance, and those people are left behind, right? So there is an error in sampling frame. So you should always cross check about sampling frame while deciding it. Then random sampling error. The difference between the sample results and the results of a census conducted using identical procedures is always known as random sampling error. You have chosen a sample randomly that creates some problems, that does not provide you the accurate results. That is also called random sampling error. Then non-response error. People who are not actually giving you the response were also a part of sample, right? But by eliminating them, either you eliminate them properly and include some more items in the sample, or you include them with zero response. Both of these things are going to create some error in the due to the sampling. Then systematic error, it might be non-sampling error or unrepresentative sample results, or maybe not just because of chance, due to study design or imperfections in execution. All the other errors which are not related to sampling would be coming under systematic error. That's it. Let us discuss some true false. Number 1, sampling involves using a small number of people in the target population to make conclusions about the entire target population. Yes, it is true. Second, a census is any complete group whose members share some common set of characteristics. This is actually the population, and survey conducted on this particular population is called census. So it is false. A canvas is an investigation of all the individual elements that make up the population. It is not canvas, but it is census. So it is false. Fourth is the first stage in the selection of a sample is to determining the sampling frame. No, it is the second step. And first stage is defining the target population. So it is false. Fifth, a list of all of the members of Atlanta chapter of American Psychological Association is an example of a sampling frame. Yes, it is true. You can include this in case of while quoting some examples as well. Then sampling frame is also called the working population. Yes, it is true. Sampling frame is even known as a working population out of the target population group. Then list brokers rent, list of names, addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses of specific populations. Yes, it is generally provided like this only. So it is true. A reverse directory provides in a different format the same information contained in a telephone directory. Yes, reverse directory actually provides the same information in actually different format, maybe city wise, maybe geographical locations wise, maybe some in some other format rather than alphabetical names. Some self-assessment questions. Number 1, explain reason for taking a sample rather than a complete census. 2, list the stages in selection of a sample. Compare and contrast random sampling and systematic non-sampling errors. That's all. Thank you. In our next video, we will be discussing sampling methods. There are two major categories of sampling methods. One is probability sampling methods. Another one is known probability sampling methods. We will discuss them in detail in our next video. Thank you.